Hi everyone. In this video, I will be focusing on how educational inequalities manifest in Israel's schools, specifically looking at grades K through 12. Now, it's no secret that Israel is a divided country. We're taught to think of this division as a conflict which can neatly be explained in terms of a duality, as a conflict between Israelis and Palestinians or a conflict between Arabs and Jews. However, the full picture of inequality and social divisions in the Holy Land are in reality much more complicated. Understanding that educational access can either elevate or limit one's chances of social mobility, and that wherever there are deep social divisions, there is ample opportunity for inequality to fester. Let's look to how Israel's education system plays into its greater story of inequality, but first, some facts. Like the US, Israel mandates and provides education for students between kindergarten and 12th grade, although it is debatable whether or not its public or state education is actually free, since parents still have to pay fees to send their children to nationally subsidized schools. Also, there is intense social fracturing between both Israelis and Palestinians and within these separate communities. This fracturing is both exemplified and reinforced by the nature of Israel's education system. The country has 4 separate school systems to serve different sectors of the population. Most Jewish children attend the secular state schools. Others from the religious Zionist community attend religious state schools. The Haredi or ultra-Orthodox children have their own schools which concentrate more on Torah learning than on secular subjects. The 4th category of state schooling is for Arab students, and within Arab schools, there are separate ones for Christian and Muslim students. There are also private schools which operate outside the state school system. However, these are no less segregated than state schools. And this is where we see the role of segregation and consequently of inequality play out first in a child's life. Let's take Jerusalem, where Jews and Arabs live as neighbors. However, in this city, Arab students get less than half of the funding per pupil when compared to Jewish students. And this is largely due to how funding mechanisms are laid out. About 80% of educational funding is national and 20% is based on localities. And this means that poor sectors of this society, such as newer Jewish immigrants and Arabs, whose economies are generally smaller, families are usually poorer, their schools have fewer resources, fewer teachers, larger class sizes, and students feel less safe. Because income variations leave up to 20% of funding in the air, children growing up who are economically marginalized are significantly less likely to achieve their full academic potential. Currently, Arab parents wanting a better future for their children, as well as parents from mixed Jewish-Palestinian families, often contemplate sending their kids to an Israeli school, which is likely to have better funding. But this means that their children sacrifice an education in Arabic and remain minorities and social outcasts. No parent should have to make this choice, especially when it is not necessary. There is another option for this region, and it lies within the 7 bilingual Yad B'Yad, or hand-in-hand schools, which educate children together in both Hebrew and Arabic. Bilingual schools solve the problem of educational inequality resulting from social segregation and economic disparities within and between Jewish and Arab families. These schools, however, have a much bigger mission. That is to break down the essentialist notions which young kids learn, notions that Jews and Arabs are fundamentally different from one another. Not only do bilingually educated children learn each other's languages, they also celebrate each other's holidays and learn about each other's national narratives. Bilingual schools prepare children to live in an extremely divided society in the middle of a war zone, which means that while coexistence is extremely fulfilling, it is equally extremely challenging. It forces everyone to confront the fact that their national story and claims to the land are not the only one. School communities grapple with this and the complexities of it all together. And while they don't require or even encourage families or students to agree with one another about the source or solution to the conflict, they just require that families listen to one another. While this may not seem radical to a US listener, these schools show children that they are equal, not as an aspirational statement or as an ideological stance, but by equally prioritizing both languages and cultures. Hand-in-hand schools are given national funding because they teach curriculum provided by the Israeli government. However, they don't stop there because they're not limited by funding. Because of its goals to reach coexistence and peace, many international donors, including foreign governments, fund extracurricular programs and in-school field trips around the country. Kids from these 7 bilingual schools score higher in English and across the board when compared to kids attending segregated schools, regardless of income level or ethnicity. While there will inevitably be parents who refuse this integrated model of education, we must instead focus on reaching parents who are either ambivalent to integrated schooling but could be persuaded by the superior education provided in these schools or by a shorter commute time if more of such schools were opened. Hand-in-hand bilingual schools provide a vision for the future in this country. They combat educational inequality through integration. And this opens them up to all kinds of international funding to further their goals of equality in the region, which allows them to have extracurricular programs and higher quality education. There are only 7 hand-in-hand schools in the country today. I believe that if more of such schools were open, at least as a 5th educational track, it would force more parents to seriously consider the option of sending their kids to a school like this. While integrated education alone is not enough to solve the almost 7 decades-long Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it is a key step in minimizing educational inequality and mending the conflict between Arabs and Jews within Israel.